Okay.
All right, we are recording.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for being here tonight. Really do appreciate you coming. Hope you'll come back often and tell your friends about us. I want to mention again the train show that we've got coming up on Zoom on September the 19th at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. It'll run a couple of hours, and we've got some really outstanding businesses and manufacturers in all different kind of scales that are going to be a part of the train show. A lot of them you may never have heard about before. Some of them are scale specific in different scales. Some of them are in all scales. Some of them, at least one of them at least, I found in a magazine about building model cars. And I got some of their product, and it has great applications for our hobby. But I've never heard of the company and never even thought about using their product until I found them in this other hobby magazine. So I think there's going to be some unusual people that you might want to meet that you probably have never heard of before as part of the show, and I hope that you'll be able to attend. It's September the 19th at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. If any of you are new tonight, if you have not done so, could you please send by the chat function to Dylan your name, your scale, and your email address, and he'll include you on our email list, and you'll get an email for all of our future events. I hope that you can also help us promote this activity. If you can recommend it to your friends and have them participate, if you can share the links to the events on your Facebook groups that you may belong to, and put it on your Facebook page, it would be greatly appreciated. The more notice that we get about it, the better off we'll be in getting more people to come. I have a friend, Paul Egret. Paul has made all of the card models that I've used in the articles for both the S-scale and O-scale models that I've built. And he is offering to be of help to you as far as designing your own buildings on your computer and then being able to print them out in whatever scale you want to print them out in. He uses MS Paint for Windows 10. He tells me that this is automatically installed in all of the Windows-based computers. And I have his email, and if you'll give me your email and tell me you're interested, I'll pass it along to Paul and you all can talk. Paul is really a talented guy in doing this, and I've seen him take different structures and so forth and turn them into something that's just totally different. So I really admire his ability to do that kind of thing, and getting his help might be a real benefit to some of you. The next My Build, like we had last time, is going to be October the 14th. And I hope that you liked it last time. Any comments that you may have or suggestions to improve it, you're most welcome. And Chris is doing a great job, I think, with it. But we need more participation from modelers to show us what you're building and talk about it a little bit. With that said, Dylan is still looking into the live streaming on YouTube that we want to start. And hopefully we'll be able to get that going the next time or two. So if any of you would prefer to do it that way, the only disadvantage of using the iStream versus coming onto the Zoom is you won't be able to have comments directly with the other people here. You'll have to post them on the chat function, and then Dylan or somebody will have to read your question to whoever it's addressed to. Now, that's all I've got tonight as far as announcements. Our featured modeler is Darren Johns. Darren lives in Australia, so it's his breakfast time while we're sitting here in the evening. It's already Sunday in Australia. And Darren has got a spectacular model railroad, and he is the person that really gave me an education on the computerization and what's possible in computerizing our model railroad. And that's going to be part of what he's going to talk about tonight. So with that said, Darren, I'll turn it over to you, sir. Hello?
Looks like he just stepped away from the computer for a moment. Looks, for some reason.
Oh, okay. Well, does anybody have any other comments or something while we're waiting for Darren to come back? Okay. Well, those of you that were here last time, I really would appreciate knowing how you liked the My Bills segment that we did.
First time here.
Got it. What scale do you model?
HO and ON30.
Ah, okay. That's great. Well, welcome. I'm glad that you joined us this evening. I hope you enjoyed this.
Sure will.
All right, Darren is back.
Yeah, my apologies. My kids were yelling and screaming. So.
Ah, no problem. All right, so I will turn it over to you, Darren.
Where would you like me to start?
Well, tell us about your railroad a little bit, and I was just absolutely amazed about the education you gave me on the computerization of it and what you're able to accomplish, and that I think is going to be a lot of interest.
All right, so what I might actually start doing, I can screen share, I believe, with this. I fail with Zoom.
You should be good to go.
So, so this is. Let me bring this across. Can everyone see that schematic of my layout there?
I can't.
Good, but then it went to your folder.
Yeah, I got a browser.
Oh, okay. All right. I'll leave it over on that one. For some reason, it wants to stay on my other screen. So, all right. So this is what we call at its infancy regarding Train Controller. So Train Controller is a German-based software company that make software for model railroading effectively. So it's modular in design. So I don't know how well you can sort of see that, but the computer screen that you're seeing we call switchboards, and you pretty well just design your layout schematically or otherwise. This is sort of a bit of a hybrid in between with the way it's all set up. So you start with a blank screen. You can do all sorts of colors. I sort of won't go into that. Different tracks. My different colors represent different power districts within my layout. So to be able to start to draw, it's just a matter of you sort of go into a very basic sort of edit mode with the within the program, and if you can just see over near this emergency stop, you just go out and you draw your tracks. And then if you want to come down for switches, you can do all sorts. You can put in crossings, double slips, and then you just sort of build your layout or your representation of your layout block by block effectively. So then within that, you then define all your DCC addresses and all that within the system. So I'll just go to one of these switches over here, and it brings up like a separate little interface. So then obviously you pick what digital command system you use. I probably should have gone back a little bit. So Train Controller will accept most mainstream digital command systems. So your NCEs, your Digitrax, and Roco's obviously what I use, which is an Austrian company. And then you define those within the interface here. So if you were to set up a digital system, this is where you do it here. Obviously, I'm not on my layout properly, so everything's offline right now. I'm in my office inside our house. So if everything's all good, you'll be online. Roco will show an IP address, because that's the way it connects to my computer on my layout, is via an IP address. So with that, you then go with all your switches or turnouts, depending on what part of the world you're in, and then you just define what the address for the stationary encoder that might be. So other things you can do within it, if you don't have the configuration of the of your wiring correct, so maybe, say if you've accidentally switched your wires around and it's showing straight track when it's actually on diverge, you can actually then go back. You don't have to go and rewire and get under the board. You can just swap out the configuration, or output configuration, they call it here. So there's a whole lot of other things we can go into at the top here, but it sort of starts getting a little bit, some of this is beyond me as well, of exactly what you can do with this. So then within, you set up insulated, isolated blocks within the system that get fed back to a occupancy detection. So I'll show you one of the more simpler blocks. So comes up with a screen very similar to the last one regarding the turnouts. You can define the usage, what they mean by the direction of the track. So the train will sort of know, well, the system won't send a train down a track against its right of way effectively. So then same with this, you go into our block editor, and then so this is sort of what you start to the building blocks of the automation beside in Train Controller. And then this is where you go into defining the DCC address within it. So I use it's a protocol called S88, which is, it's not like a digitrack system. It's a bit more simply than that. Pretty well, it's either on or off regarding its occupancy. So Train Controller will do all the heavy lifting regarding any automation, collision avoidance within the program here. So it's just a matter of me selecting the correct, there's different buses out of a high-speed interface that connects the computer to the DCC system. So it's got 3 buses, left bus, right, and middle. So obviously they're different parts of my layout. Does anyone got any questions at this point, or do you want me to keep going?
Definitely interesting.
Yeah. So this is
Darren,
my main. Yep.
Darren, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
What is the size of your model railroad?
In feet, it is approximately 30 by 30 feet.
At a normal
That's
at a normal operating session, how many people would you have there?
2 or 3 of us. This is one of the big reasons why I've gone for this software, because I can set up what we call schedules within the railroad, where the trains, I can either control them fully manually by my hand controller, or the computer can control them for me. So to a given location. So what I mean by that is, once you've sort of gone in and defined all your data to get it up and running, so to speak, you then can set up destinations where you want to send your trains. So most of my trains they all come out of this Belair yard here, and then they'll go to somewhere else on the layout. So to give you some sort of idea, when I first designed this switch panel, because I've actually got others within my layout as well that are different portions. So to give you an idea, so if I can if you can see down this bottom right hand corner, there's some letters here. So what they allow you to do is, Train Controller needs a link between point A and point B effectively. And if the link is broken, either by accidentally deleting one of these lines out, the system can't send a train there, because it follows the logic of the lines between the route, or they call the route between block A and block B. So with these little, they call them connectors. So if you see these over here, I and H, which represent on another, what we call another switchboard. So this is I and H here, if you can see on the bottom left. So this train, if we can follow, will come out of this fourth track here. We'll head up around the roundhouse, across onto I, and then it'll hit this connector here, and then comes into here. And this is quite a large passenger terminal, but a freight train will just keep on going, because this is all my hidden staging here. So so you'll see an LBS, which is what I call lower Beltoma staging, and upper. So so depending on which train it is, which type of train it is, all freight trains will go on the upper staging, which is here, and all passenger trains are on the lower staging. So what a train will then do, so if I want to send a train to this location here, which is where some of my industries are, it'll come out of the fourth track, it will go through the staging, come back around onto this F track. Will then come in out over the top here, and basically straight through this other passenger, which sits just above the Belair yard, effectively. So, and then into this location here. So at this point here, I have a few little industries that I can shunt, which are replicated here. And then we go from there. So I've been working with a gentleman that lives in Germany. He's a British gentleman that's been helping me do the coding for a lot of this. Now we came up with, so most people would look at that screen and go, oh my goodness, it's just a lot there. So from a dispatcher's point of view, because I've built it, I know exactly what's going on. So we have sort of made these what we call local panels, which is, this is the local panel for my what's called Barham, which is this area here. So with that, a train comes in on this top track, goes around the reverse loop effectively, and comes and nestles on this track here. So at this point, I uncouple the train using a Rapido uncoupling magnet that I can switch on and off with a switch on the fascia, and then I'll shunt out the two, pretty well, they're two team tracks, if you want to use, I suppose, an American term. And then these tracks here will hold about, I think this front track's about 8 wagons, because it's a little bit longer, because I've actually got a beer facility here that is probably one of my major sort of industries for that area. Then it's just basically food stores and freight siding on this one here. So where this software sort of comes into its own, so if I'm running this railway by myself, which I can do, I can then, if you can sort of see this little control panel here, I can then set up that train to head back to this track here automatically. So I can just shunt the sidings, do what I want to do, and then just send that train back automatically under its own steam, so to speak, with full collision avoidance, so it won't run into anything else effectively. Sets all the signals, sets all the turnouts, all to be correct, and it's just, the train goes on its merry way, and then I can finish doing what I want to do here, and then often what I'll do, I'll go back and then I'll go and shunt the train out here once it arrives, and I can send another one out to a different location. Different location on here is, so a track that might start on this BY 8 and 9, which is everything to the sort of the left of the screen for me, or westbound, I think. Eastbound on my layout is to the left, and it'll come up here So yet again, it comes out to these little connectors on the bottom of the screen. So that will then go to the Alpine part of my layout. So this area here is sort of another hidden staging area where that train that comes out of the Blair Yard will then head up through this area. It's like a rather large switchback and sort of heads into what a town called Nancy, named after my wife. So this is to give you some sort of idea. I'm 6'2" tall, and that's about nose level for me. That particular area. So same with this. It's got the same. If you notice the same sort of little control panel here, I can send trains automatically or manually back to the Blair Yard area, and away we go. So if I've got more than say three operators is sort of the most I've sort of had at any given time at this point. They will be the individual will be localized at this part of the layout, and they can tell which trains are coming in. So you can sort of see this Nancy 1 track right there, and just underneath it tells me which locomotive is in that track. So that is a G54. I'm a European modeler, and it's a 262 in its configuration. So I can actually be the other side of the layout, which is unseen. So it's like a view block between these two parts of the layout, but I can know which locomotive is coming my way, and then I can set my mic and controller up so I can receive that train at any stage to then shunt this area out.
Darren, how many trains can you run at one time by yourself?
Oh, it comes down to what you're comfortable with, I think. I could probably run 15 trains on this layout at any given time.
Impressive.
Sorry?
Very impressive.
I could try to do that, but then it comes down to what you're comfortable with. Like anything else, it relies on electrical contacts to say that this train is actually correctly in that block. Probably 7, 8, 9 times out of 10 it is correct, but sometimes, like anything else, it will throw up errors, and then you can have issues that the trains are then not lost within the layout, but it can cause other issues. So what can often happen is, say if a train is coming up the grade here, so give you some sort of idea from this level here to this level here, well, sorry, probably this, so this Batunga staging to this Bella or Bell here is probably 3% grade up through here. So to give you some sort of idea, that is a length that sort of comes around back on itself a few times, and it would be, so these sections here would probably be 8 or 9, maybe even, 9, 10 feet long. So it sort of comes around and switches back on itself. So what will happen is, if I get an incorrect occupancy for whatever reason, all it'll do is say if it goes, the train is meant to coming on inbound on NS1, and for some reason it flashes up for some sort of electrical glitch on NS3. The physical icons here for each train might show up on NS3, but it'll still show an occupied pink block, so something can still not go into that block. So it still has its collision avoidance, so you won't have collision, so to speak. It's just the computer gets itself a little bit out of sync, I suppose, is the best way to describe it.
Darren, let me ask you this. If I have Digitrack to operate the locomotives, and I have this computer program installed on my computer,
sure,
then I really don't have to do what I call programming. What I have to do is fill in information into the program about where my blocks are, where my signals are, where the switches are, where what the train designations are with my Digitrack, and then the computer will take that information and
Correct.
based on a schedule of train movements that I establish, it can
Correct.
operate my railroad.
That is correct. Yeah. I probably went a little bit too far too early, but so on my layout, you're exactly right there, Jim. So once you set up all your switchboards, with all the information, with all your DCC, occupancy detection unit addresses and your stationary point to call turnout decoders, you then set up where you want to send trains to. So with that, there's another screen for that. So so to give you some sort of idea, so this screen we're in here is the schedule screen. So a schedule within train control is not a schedule over time. It's a schedule from sending a train from point A to point B, B to C, and so on. So this is sort of the way I set up. So on the left-hand side, these are all the schedules I've set up within my layout. So that sends trains all across my train system. So it is rather intimidating just to look at this list, but once you sort of break things down and just do one at a time, and you sort of set up some sort of process of how you set the computer up, it is actually not that difficult. So if I was to click on one of these blocks, so you can sort of see, so let me make that a little bit larger. So you can see that's a rather broken down version of that screen there. Do you agree? Do you see that?
Yeah.
So what this actually is, this is telling me one of the schedules I have set up within this area. So it starts over here and makes its way across the layout. So what we're actually doing here is we set up then sequence of schedules. So as I said before, so we'll call this point A here to point B. So this is also, then we set up another one. So point B will be then point B will come area to C and so on. So that you sort of build incrementally your schedules around the layout depending on how you want to do it. So I'll show you probably another one that's probably a little bit larger. So these ones here are all my schedules that come out of the belay yard and head to that Barham station that I showed you first. If I can show it, it's not coming up for some reason. There we go. So, all right. So this one starts out of the BY4 and heads to here, and then it'll go through, then it'll link in with this one. It'll come around and then head all the way around to what we now know as the Barham station. So the way you do this is it's quite simple to, there's a few different ways to set up these, what they call schedules. So there's a whole lot of icons across the top of the screen here. And the best way to do it is, I'll pick a little bit easier switchboard to look at. All right, so this is my new harbour area that I'm starting, that I've finished doing the build. So it'll probably be easiest to do it here because there's not as much going on at this point. So if I was to push this button here, if it'll let me do it. Oops, no, I lie. It brings up this little, what they call an auto train. So what I can do from here is then I can click on a block, and this is me saying this one goes upwards into the yard. So the arrows are a start of a schedule. So with that, that denotes with a little green, probably can't, it's quite hard to see. You can see it quite easily on your computer screen when you're working within it. And then you go, okay, where do I want to send this train to? So I want to send it over here. So then you've got a little orange square there, and that is basically the destination. So you've got the start block and the destination. So what I can then go from there is I can let the computer do its thing and go, okay, what is the best way to get to that location? I can just push another little button, and it's gone. Okay, so what that actually is, what that's actually meant is, so it hasn't found a path. So I've made an error somewhere within here when I've built this on the schematic that's told me I can't do whatever I can do. But what I can do, which is what I'll often do, is I can then go and select all the blocks that I want the train to go in. So there's certain occasions where, so this might go, all right, start here, and the computer will go, okay, I want to send the train in over this HVH2 East track, then via into this track and send it to there. But I said, so maybe I don't want to go to that track. I want to eliminate that track, and I want to go HVH1 East and then in. So that's obviously and then you just set up from there. If you head back over to your, if it'll let me do it. Oops. All right. So what it will then do, it's asking me to then save this, this schedule, so to speak. So this is how you then go through and then save it. So we'll go back over to that initial screen that we're on. Where it'll be, and it'll be hiding in here so much, just a matter of finding it. So it just basically pops in over here, and then you play around with the schedule on it. And I can't find it. So you can imagine when you set up, say if you let the train controller set them up or set the route for you, you can imagine something, I'll pick a large one, going right across my layout, that it sort of comes up, you can say like this, even this simple area. So this one here is when I've set up exactly the same way, but it's given me, I've defined which blocks I want this train to go through between point A and point B. Other than that, the system might have gone, okay, I want to come up through here, then up there. So this is probably not a bad example to use. Then you just save that within the system, and you can recall that at any time. So then I go one step further within this. So I'll go into one of these blocks. Where are we? So this is obviously the schedule interface. So that's that exact same schedule that we're looking at, but I go one step further. I set up like schedules that have certain conditions on them. So what I mean by conditions are, you can set up within Train Controller that only if certain conditions are met, that with that schedule start. So the one on this particular one is it needs to have a particular locomotive group, which is set up within the system as well. So that's what I call Belair Yard shunted freight engines. So all you do is you go and add all your information for your locomotives, which is done, and I'll just quickly show you that in this screen here. So you set up all your information for your trains. Now you can actually set actual proper photos. I haven't actually done that. So this one here, I don't know if you can see that, probably not all that well. You can actually set the proper photo for that given locomotive. You can use another piece of software within Train Controller called Animator that brings across the actual locomotive. So what you do, you define all that within that, the connections, so the DCC address, your functions within the system, and it can go one step further. You can actually set it up that this is obviously a steam locomotive that you have to set up. It basically uses its resources, coal and water, and you can actually set it up within the system that it uses 3 tons of coal per 100 kilometers. So how that actually works it out, you might ask, within Train Controller is you go into Train Control and you set up what they call profile runs. So a profile run is between, you need 3, what would you call it? 3 occupancy detection sections. to do a profile run. So it starts in a section, and then it goes, what the system, how it actually works then is over a given distance of it's 100 centimeters, so 3 feet in your terminology, in the US part of the world, is the locomotive, the system then goes through each speed step individually. So it just drives backwards and forwards by itself over this 100 centimeters or 3 feet, and it times the distance between it entering the block and it exiting that block that's 3 feet long. And with that, it comes down to, you can get precision stopping distances within train controller. Then I can probably, if I set them up correctly, I can get a stopping distance on an automatically run train within 1/4 of an inch, I suppose. Not even that, probably 1/8 of an inch. It's quite sophisticated how it actually gets done. So I digress there a little bit. So back to that schedule there. So you put all your data in regarding your trains. Then I've gone one step further, is then I set up wagon types. So a Barham wagon can only go to the Barham town. I have other wagons that are called, for each of my locations, Nancy, which is the Alpine area. So only those can go to that area. I have then what I call my world wagons, which then are what I call all staging tracks. So the reason they're called world wagons is because it's for the rest of the world. So it's all off stage, all your off stage trains. So with that, then I've then set up what we call virtual staging. So this staging track here doesn't actually exist in the real world at all. All this allows me to do is to shunt these virtual wagons around. So basically what the virtual wagon does is it does two things. So within train controller, when you've got a wagon that's sitting on, if I can bring one in, just let me bring it. Let me set one up here, just on this BY4 track. If I can do it, there we go, sign train. Where are we? So I'll do a Nancy 2. So that brings in that wagon. See how now it goes red? So what that actually does, that tricks the system into, so there's actually nothing sitting on that block effectively. So I don't, because I've got so many wagons that interchange with each other over such a large layout, I don't run any detection, so to speak, on my wagon. So what I mean by detection, I don't have resistor wheel sets that fire off the detection within the system. I just had too many issues trying to get them in onto small scale European rolling stock effectively. So we can the whole idea regarding doing that. So the way we came around that is we have these virtual wagons. So the system now thinks, okay, so there could be a rake of wagons that is 2 feet long sitting in that track, but there's no physical detection there. So I now know that an automatic train that might be coming in through here, coming in the other way, will not collide with these wagons. So it's just another level of collision avoidance that we build into it. So has anyone got any questions?
I don't have any questions, but this is brilliant. This really is brilliant.
So yeah, thank you. So is there any bits that you'd like me to concentrate? Obviously there's a lot going on in this screen. So another strength of this program is, so as I said, still are working with a gentleman in Germany. What we can actually do, it's got a function called the simulator, and it runs like that. So it's a nice American big boy, I think it is. Tell me if I'm wrong. No. So what we can do with the simulator is we can simulate on a desktop how this railway is going to run. we can't simulate the correct firing, what I call firing off of the detection, because it's not that sophisticated because it's not connected to the layout. So as I said, this computer is not currently connected to my layout because it's inside my house. So what I can actually do is we can simulate how these schedules will look on the computer screen. So what I mean by that is, where are we? So what I might try to do, did you want to see how that sort of works? I could probably fire off a train, and I'll show you how the simulator works. Stand by, I'll just get that set up.
Darren, when you set up your schedules, do the schedules automatically make sure the switches are thrown, the signals are right, and so forth?
Correct. Yeah. So that's an interesting point you raise. So within Train Controller, there's two types of signals. All right. So you'll see the signals. I'll bring it up. Can you all see that screen? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So you can see the signal there. So they are called what's called internal signals. So how Train Controller works is you've got, and it calculates what it'll do. So between this, say this block here, BY9 and BY out, it calculates, and between each block is what they call the route or the route. All right. So between the route, it's then going to set all your switches correctly, and it'll lock them down. So if I've got a train that's going between BY9 and BY out, it basically locks down, and I'll show you what that looks like when I set a train off very shortly. Basically, a yellow line goes across. So what that actually means is I have another schedule that goes from this head shunt up into this area as well. So it will lock it out. So this train, if I've got a train sitting here that's on a schedule from BY head shunt to BY9, it can't physically go up into that part of the layout. So that's where the collision avoidance comes in. It won't set its points. It'll just sit there in a line, waiting its turn to then head up into that location. So even if a train is run on a automatic or a manual schedule, so you can't physically, you can move the locomotive, but I'm not saying on a manual schedule, but you can't physically get it up where you want it to because it's basically locked all the points or the turnouts. So, so these, when I was talking about the profiling runs, that's what these little arrows are. So how Train Controller works is it likes to know. So I know this, each block you've got to measure the length. So this one's 280 centimeters. So I wouldn't know what the conversion that is to.
About 120 inches.
120 inches. Okay.
Prox.
So yeah. So then the system then knows. So this one has got one detection unit in it because I don't need very accurate. What would you call it? Accurate stopping distances. So I know that this one here is. So this is where it gets a bit confusing. So. So what will happen is, so just a purely, if we're going from BY head shunt to BY9, so I don't want, because that's such a long block, and if I'm using that schedule, I don't want the locomotive going all the way down the end of this block to stop to what it needs to do, because normally it's just, maybe it's doing some shunting up there, or it's getting some wagons ready for an outgoing train, maybe, just for argument's sake. So what that is, I'll bring that back up, is I've set up different stopping distances. So this one here is mainly for a movement from this BY head shunt So it only goes into this block 20 centimeters and stops. It doesn't transverse the other 260 centimeters. 20 centimeters, what's that? 10 inches, I suppose. So then I've got other ones that will move all the way down. So what you can then do with train controller, you set up ramps. So you imagine a train coming in and it gets to its 20 centimeter mark. What it'll do, it'll just stop, and it just it's quite a jerky motion. So, but that's only sort of going crawling speed through this location, so you don't really notice it as much. But if you've got a train that's coming all the way down to the end here, obviously it's within its yard limit speeds, but at the 25 centimeter mark, because this is 30 centimeters the other end, so the last 5 centimeters, it'll start ramping down its speed to come to a much gradual stop, if that makes sense. So depending on, so you can't use the same data across all these different blocks on how you set them all up on right across the board, if that makes sense. So each block has to be set up individually, effectively. So so this is probably one of the more complicated blocks, this one here, purely because if you can look down in this area here, there's sort of a lot going on. So what I've set up here is, so a train that comes in from the Alpine region, from BY up to BY in, comes in through here. So as soon as it starts getting here, it starts pretty well at a crawl speed. So that's called the threshold speed within train controller, which is what you set up in those profile runs. So a threshold speed is probably just only a few notches in on your controller. So because what we're trying to do here is we're setting up very precision stopping distances, because that train will stop over I've set up a KD electromagnet uncoupling setup. So what that will then do, if I've got it all on automatic, it'll crawl in, and that little indicator there is I've used some Azatec infrared detector, so it knows millimeter perfect exactly where that train is over a distance of maybe 6 inches. So it'll then park itself over the magnet. It'll do its little what I call the KD dance. So obviously you've got the tension on the coupler. It'll back itself up all automatically if that's the way you want to do it, or you can do it manually. It's just all turn on and off with this little switch here. And then it'll the locomotive will reverse itself back. It'll open up, obviously the magnet turns itself on, opens up the couplers. In the perfect world, if your couplers are set up correctly, the couplers will disengage with each other, and then it'll move forward about 3 or 4 inches and uncouple. We built in a sort of a fail safe with that, because what it can then do is an automatic train that comes in will then go off on its another schedule. Once it's set up, it'll put itself to bed up in the freight facility or the engine yard up here, or sorry, the turntable. So you can imagine a scenario, if your train doesn't uncouple properly, you've got a whole rake of wagons that are sitting up in your turntable to get out, which is not all that desirable. So what we did, if the train doesn't uncouple, when it does happen on occasions, that the wagon will get pulled through the infrared detector, and if it detects that, it knows it hasn't uncoupled, and it'll just stop the schedule in its tracks. It'll just automatically, it's like an automatic shutdown of that particular schedule, and then you just go through the uncoupling procedure again. So that's a little bit of a fail-safe that we build into it, because a few times that it didn't uncouple properly, and I had rakes of wagons up here in this turntable in. So, which is rather annoying.
Darren, let me ask you another question.
Sure.
Your schedule determine a train going from point A to point B.
Correct.
Do they also determine the time that train is supposed to leave point A?
You can set it up like that. I've yet to delve into that side of things because I've only pretty well looked at my freight operations. I'm still trying to work out how I'm sort of going to run that on this layout because it's such a big enterprise. I'm trying to get the track work finished, so to speak, and I'm nearly at that point. And it's taken me best part of 12 years to get to this point, to actually build it with a busy life, as you know. So with young kids and full-time work and the like. So yes, you can do that. I can envisage what I will do when I set up my passenger operations. They will probably be run on schedules, and that is a timed schedule. So it might start at 8 o'clock in the morning. So, and then that train will go out. So yes, you can definitely set it up like that.
If you don't run it on that system, and say you don't put in the time, when do the trains start and within the system automatically? How does that work?
Okay, so what I will then do, we set up what we call a central control panel, which is basically like the dispatchers panel. So disregard all that over there. That's just for me working stuff out. So all right. So everything is pretty well controlled by a dispatcher from this panel. So probably just disregard sort of the rail car services, the commuter, because they're fully automatic schedules. So I'll talk about them quickly. So the rail car services and everything is started by these little buttons. All right. So from a glance, I can tell railcar 1 is currently on BS3 track. So with that, BS3 track is this one here. So it reports back. So the dispatcher can physically be sitting somewhere else remotely. And that's another thing that I've been working on, Jim, as well, remote or virtual operations. So even you might be able to run this thing one day from the other side of the world. And it's actually possible. I can actually do it. I've been able to do it within my own home via the network. So you actually can do it. So anyway, so you start these rail cars. So these rail cars here are started by these buttons. So rail car 1 has got a home of BS3. So it's in its home block. All right. So that one will be started there. So then rail car 2 is started, and that's this one up here. So to give you some sort of idea, that distance that these trains will transverse with each other, that would be 15 feet, I would think, 15 to 20 feet from there to there. I would think that's quite a distance. So what you would end up doing, so these, as I said, are on automatic schedules that are started off here. So I would start that one there. How about, do you want me to show you what it looks like on the screen with these two schedules running?
Yeah.
It's probably the easiest way of doing it. So, all right. So if I'm going to start that one there and that one there, so you can see the left is always the outbound. So you'll see the little person. So that means I've set up a 20-second delay to take on passengers at that track. That's what that's telling me. All right, so we'll head over to here. So that's what it looks like. So you can see how now this rail car 2 has turned its track power on and it's heading out on its way out. And then rail car 1 is now coming on its track underneath. So you can imagine once it sort of gets here, that's sort of got to come across each other. So there's obviously this, all the semaphore signals are actually operating. So you can sort of just see it'll just flick through. So this is telling me this is now out of this block, and in very shortly you'll see this point here will get set. If it'll do it. And now it's going to go through to there. So this is, you can imagine if this was live on the rule layout, this would be all automatic. I wouldn't be touching this at all, except for pushing those buttons at the beginning. And these trains sort of just transverse with each other. So you can imagine now we become a bit of a pest with these rail cars, because you can imagine a freight train that's come out of the Belize yard, done its thing through the staging areas, and it's coming in on this track here. There's G track, and it gets to this point here. No, sorry, LMS 6. I lied.
I actually
So
can I just interrupt you for a second?
Sure.
I got some background noise on my end. I'm just trying to figure out where it's coming from. I'd rather hear about this than the Ram summer clearance event, just to be fair.
not mine. How many microphones are open?
Not many. I'm just trying to figure, like I said, I can't figure out where it's coming from.
Why don't you just,
Well, I'm in Australia, and it's just I'm hearing in America.
yeah,
Well, sorry about that. I think I
Yeah,
got it.
that's gone. Might have been Kaz.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, so you can imagine these trains are just doing their thing. So we've got a freight service that's coming in on this track here. Is going to get to this point here, LMS 6 track, and these things are going in between. So this is where the system will then sort of take over its collision avoidance. So the way I've set it up, the schedule up, so that, remember, the schedule is from point A to point B, that if a signal is red, it'll then, so if the locomotive driver doesn't stop at the red signal, or the train is not sensing that it's slowing down and it's coming up to a red signal, which are these internal signals that I was talking about before, the system will automatically emergency stop your train. So you can't run through this point here effectively. So that's another sort of fail-safe regarding how that works. So you imagine these rail cars are going back, flip-flopping backwards and forwards. This train then, that'll pick its point, the system will go, okay, you've waited long enough. You can now have these down tracks, and then it'll come into here. So then if you remember when I spoke of before, I set up another control panel, because obviously that whole thing's a little bit overwhelming, that we go into the local panel, and this is what it looks like. So that's that BS3 track, and that's it sitting here. So what Train Controller doesn't like, and you're probably wondering, why is this track plan, why does it not have all these blocks like it does here in the nice pictures? So a little bit of a shortcoming with Train Controller, it doesn't like having two indicators on separate switchboards. So these are all the switchboards on one file, if that makes sense. So what I mean by file is the file of my Fallen Log Railway is the file. So it just throws up all sorts of errors. So we had to come up with a way to, where are we? Sorry, I'm moving around here. There we go. So we had to come up with a way to replicate this panel. So what you can do, so you can't physically have another block called BS3, but what you can do, you can have we can have occupancy detection that fires off. So what that means is, so you can't use the physical DCC address, but there's other ways we can work around it. So the way Train Controller also works is, it works on whether a block is reserved, occupied, or current. So current meaning is there's physically a current detecting piece of rolling stock, which I don't have, or locomotive within that block. So that will then fire off the block and show us visually that block is now got something in it. So we went one step further. I now know that's obviously rail car number 2 that's in that block. which is exactly the same as this here. So that's sort of a little, I don't know if that sort of makes sort of sense what I'm saying. It just doesn't like having, because it works on, all the collision avoidance works on having one, say, BS1 activated, or one address, if that makes sense. It doesn't like having the same address across different switchboards, because it just confuses, well, which one am I turning on or off? It just doesn't like it. So we had to work out a way.
Yeah, it's like running a program in duplicate.
Correct. It just doesn't like it. It's just not that, it's sophisticated enough, but it just didn't, it just threw up all sorts of errors, and it just didn't work nicely. So, and then we sort of for an operator working that, so then what we had to do is we had to put in some protection for a shunting train in this area. So you imagine you've got these trains coming in and out. That's only the rail cars, but at some point I'm going to throw another spanner in the works. Well, I'm going to have a long distance commuter train that might come from one side of the layout to the other in on this BS2 track. So BS2 is also going to be used as a part of being able to shunt this facility. So we sort of had to come up sort of a way how we were going to protect the train, particularly if we got, not so much when we're shunting in through here, but when we're using this part of the layout here, because this is all hidden in a mountain effectively, out the back of that station. So what we ended up doing, so you can sort of see this is locked during shunting. So what I can do is that it doesn't allow that point there to move. I don't know if you can see that. So it's just toggling, it just won't let you do it. It'll let you move this one, but also what it's not allowing you to do is it's not, this little red bar came up. So this track here, from memory, is actually bi-directional. So it's not going to allow a train to come in through here and collide with things coming in from the other way, from an easterly direction, I suppose. So we had to build in all these little fail-safe sort of, and what it also doesn't allow a train, so that commuter train that you might have been coming from elsewhere in the world on this very top track BS4, it can't physically get, it can wait at the station, which is a station platform up here, but it can't get around the loop to get into this part of onto BS2 track. So that's just something simple. It's just a matter of a little simple lock that we put in to give that train some protection, I suppose, more than anything. So during its shunting. So yeah, where are we? Central control. So as I sort of explained before, this is where we started. So those schedules are now finished. You can see that the little lights are not red, and they're in their destination, well, not their home, they're in their home blocks, so to speak. So you can either just run the schedule once, or I can then set up where are we? Oh, here we go. So this little button here, I can just set up, it just keeps going until I tell it to stop. So these are what we call just repeat railcar. So it's just a matter of, I push that button and it'll just keep going backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards until I physically stop that lot of schedules. So to give you some sort of idea regarding schedules, railcar 1 schedule, this is its home block, this is its destination. So that's obviously one schedule going through there to LMS 7, and then another one from LMS 7 back to BS3. So there's 2 schedules just running that one train, and then we put them together in a sequence, so they just keep toggling through with each other. I don't quite know why that train's over there, but anyway. So any other questions?
Well, I sort of came in a little bit late. Did you have?
Sure.
Did you start earlier with a sort of a simplified track layout, or were you doing this the entire time?
I do have a. So this is how. What do you mean? Like how do you start the process?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I mean, I got a very small layout. It's basically combine a John Allen time saver with a
Right. Okay.
small little 2x2x3 inglenook.
Yep. Yeah. Sure.
And
Inglenook. Yeah. Okay. What I could probably. Where are we? No.
plus, I'm only probably going to use one locomotive at a time because it's a small layout.
Yeah. So just on that. So if you're where you might go touring with that little layout. So what you can actually do is where are we? And where I need a dispatch window. So in effect, what you get is, and I won't sort of go into it because they're annoying to get rid of for some reason. Like it's actually once you sort of with the different switchboards, once you sort of activate one within train controller, it makes it very difficult to get rid of them, if that makes sense. And because I don't do it very often, it's the sort of thing I need to go and redo. But the reason why that is because you put all this time and effort into it, you want to just go accidentally just X out of it. Oh, now I've lost the switchboard, if that makes sense. So,
So I mean, there's
effectively,
a way to save each layout as a project.
oh, definitely, yeah. So what I could show you. So you could definitely do that. I'll show you. So that's how it starts. So there's different ways. Mine looks a little bit different. There's different users that's the classic look. So that's pretty well how you start. You start with one switchboard, and then the first thing, there's different things you can do. So normally you start with getting your DCC system up and running. All right. So obviously mine is the Roco one, but I've sort of got this one in the background. So what my Roco just purely runs the trains. That's all it does. The secondary one with this is what it's called LDT, is what controls my turnout. No, so my block control system. So I'll go back. The Roco does just the trains and the turnouts and the signals. And I've got a separate one that just runs my block occupancy. So the reason I did it that way was not to confuse the system more than anything, because there's obviously a lot, but once you get a lot of trains operating automatically, there's a lot going on. And it was just a way that was suggested to me by one of the experts within the train controller forum to sort of split it off like that. Because obviously the block occupancy is the one that is showing where the trains are so they don't collide. So with that, you can go into all the different DCC systems that you can go for. So whether you're an NCE fan, or I think Jim, you spoke of before, Digitrax is here somewhere. So all the major ones are here. So then obviously Digitrax uses the LocoNet protocol. So from there, you obviously define that. When that sets up the parameters within your Roco system or your Digitrax, say, or the LocoNet, because LocoNet runs a lot differently than what the S88 protocol does. So the Digitrax is a lot more sophisticated, or so LocoNet is a lot more sophisticated, because what you can actually do is, my understanding, you set up hubs with addresses. So I can have, so if you got your command post or your command station, you go to your first Digitrax detection module, like I think a BL1168 or whatever they are. You've got 16 occupancy detections within that. So that would be on this system one 1 to 16, I think that's how it works for that. So with Digitrax or LocoNet, you can then bolt on other ones a lot easier without having to change your addresses. So with S88, the trouble with it is, so my first module that is connected to the what they call the network bus is address 1 to 16. The next one is 17 to 32, and then so on and so on and so on. So you can't just unplug, say, the module that is controlling blocks 1 to 16 to put another one in, because then 1 to 16 is 1 to 16 elsewhere in the layout, but what was 17 to 32 is now 33 plus, if that makes sense. So you can't just bolt them in, it just adds 16 to the string effectively.
So this is almost like a layout command control.
Correct, yeah. So then from there, it's just a matter of what you want to draw. Is just like a pen tool. And then it's just quite easy. It's quite, and then you put your turnouts in. It'll let me do it. There we go. So it automatically puts your turnouts in however you want to do it. But if there's specific turnouts that you want to use, you've got all the different ones here. So your left hand, right, three-way, you got your Ys, and then you've got slip switches, double slip switches. And then now, I don't know, Edward, whether before when I was talking about when you're setting up schedules, if there's a broken piece of track, so I'll give you an example. So if you're you're setting up your schematic and then you want to put your block in, that's just a matter of another icon up here, and you just go and put all your blocks in. Oops. And then you set it up like that. So say if, for argument's sake, that there was one of these bits of track was missing underneath. For some reason, the system doesn't like it. Even though it's sitting under a block, it just throws up a Furby. So obviously you got to be quite careful when you're doing this part of the setup that everything is complete, because it will become an issue later on. But when you try defining the schedule, it'll tell you there's an issue regarding the linkage between point A and point B effectively. So from there, Ed, you go through and you put all your addresses in for your turnouts or your point work. Then same with the blocks. You set up these indicators. So you put a new contact because it's a contact indicator. And then it's a matter of, now, as I said before, all my blocks are controlled by this S88. So I just got to pick the correct bus. So this is what I was explaining before, how you need to daisy chain. So this will go to 1 to 16, so it won't go any further. All right. So, but if I go 2 to 16, so 2 to 16, so it's always 2 times, if that makes sense. So that's obviously 32, the 32nd binding point, I suppose, or connection point within on your occupy detection module. So from there, Ed, you can literally save as many switchboards as you like as different projects as you see fit. Just you've got to go through each time to set up, your basic parameters within, which are obviously a continuous track plan, or not continuous, but a track plan. You've got these set up with your DCC addresses and your blocks set up with the DCC addresses.
Darren, if I was starting to try to set it up on mine,
yeah,
what what's the first thing that I would do?
You would draw your track plan in some shape or form. So just like we're doing here. So depending on how you want to do it, you can either do it like mine, where say if you've got, I'll wait, see if I can open it up. If you want to, if it'll let me do it. No, that's all right. I'll open up. Sorry, I just thought I had another file there. I'll go on my other one. Hang on. So what I also then do is, because if you muck around with one, particularly a more complicated one, if you muck around with one part of it, it can affect the other part of the layout. Hang on. Let me bring that back. You've got the schematic back? Yeah,
Yes.
so the first thing you need to do is set up what your layout's going to look like within the screen. It's very modular and angular in its presentation, I suppose. And what I mean by that is, if you can have a look on, I'll go to this one because it's a bit larger. See how you can't do curves effectively. So that's just one of the, because everything is done in little squares. You can't physically do a rounded curve. So that's the best you can sort of get. So, but you might not want to do it that way. You might want to have these little sections like I've got here, where you got these connectors. So you effectively can have the connectors going from that section to, where are we? Yep, wrong one. Get the right switchboard. To say that section there. So you can imagine if you could literally, with that first example I showed with, say, a basic piece of track, is you could do that and then put a connector in, if it'll let me do it. And put connectors in, and that would replicate within the system a circular piece of track. Does that sort of make sense? Because what the system's looking for is, okay, so if you've then got, so if you've got a very simple oval piece of track, that literally could replicate. So what it'll do, it'll drive along, it'll see in the route here, there's a connector A, so it'll look within the system, where is the next connector A, which is here. So it'll just literally, you could literally just have that as a loop track. If you just wanted to keep it very, I think schematic sort of, how you wanted to do your layout. I wanted mine a little more representative of sort of what it looks like as you sort of follow the trains around, but there is that option if you want a pure schematic to flatten out your track plan, if that makes sense. Yeah. Probably not. You look a bit perplexed there, Jim.
Sort of makes sense as a sort of like a CTC board where,
correct.
They have just, basically straight across. There's no curves on it.
Yeah. So I don't know if Ed, you saw my central control panel, which is that's it there. I have seen there are some American modelers out there that have created CTC boards within Train Controller. That's probably my version of it, I suppose. It's probably a little bit different, but that's what they have done, yeah. So wherever that track is, yeah. So it's a hard concept to get your mind around that can actually be a loop track, but all it is doing, it's just looking for, so if the train's coming from heading left, it's going, okay, we got a connector here. So where is that connector? Where's the other corresponding connector? And it's A at the other end. So it'll just literally just keep going around in circles. That's within the system. That's just how it works in its sort of basic form. So where I sort of how I work it with mine, I do it across. I'll just delete that off. So yeah, what it'll do, just looks for the next connector. So normally all my connectors go from one switchboard panel to another. So like I've got here, because obviously I couldn't draw it on one switchboard. There are modelers out there that have everything on the one, but I wanted bigger control panels so they're a bit easier to see. But it gets very, very busy how it looks. So that corresponds with that control panel. So that's the route it goes out. And so it goes out and comes in. And then I've got these ones on this side, which go to the other part of my layout, which is this part here. Is there any other questions? Jim, you look in deep thought.
Darren, have you?
Sorry, go on, Jim.
No, go ahead.
So is this layout actually in operation now or no?
Everything is operating on this layer except, where is it? My harbour area. So that track has been built. It's laid. All the tortoise switch machines have been installed for all these. All the what I call the droppers or the feeder wires have been soldered onto all the rails. But it's yet to have power. There's no bus, no DCC going to it yet. So, but I have run it because what I can actually do is you can see this E here, this connector. So it comes around to this part of the yard. So I just run just like two alligator clips across because it's a different defined power district. It's going to be its own power district. So Ed, you probably missed all that. So all these different colors are all my different power districts. So I'll run Thames Valley boosters with them as well. So it's all operating except for this area here.
Darren, can you share the photograph that you sent me for the article of your layout?
Oh yeah, yep, definitely. I'll let you have a look at that. Stand by. So the computer generated one that I sent you, is that the one you mean, Jim?
No, the other one, I don't know what you call it. I call it a diagram of your layout.
Oh, okay. All right. Yep. Just let me find that. Hang on. That one there?
Yeah.
Yep. All right. So I'll try to.
Now, can you show me on that diagram where the Nancy yard is?
Well, the Alpine area.
Yeah.
Or the Belair yard. All right. So the Nancy station, which is the area, Ed, you probably missed that as well. I'm 6'2", so that's about my nose height. So this is about waist height. So that's waist height to me. But mind you, this whole run through here is 10 feet in both directions, but it sort of winds back on itself. So, all right, Jim, to answer your question. So this Nancy area here, just let me rescale this so it's a little bit easier to see. All right, so that is this area here down the bottom. So those red sections there are that section there. So that's all hidden underneath. So it's like two different levels there. So these sections here, it's probably a good idea that you asked me to bring this up, Jim, because this area here, they switch back on each other. So the yard that we speak of that I've done most of is up here. So the trains come in, go in under this section here, and they go through the hidden yard. Now at this point, they can either get turned around proper through the reverse loop, or they can come out this side and then they come up a slight grade, and they come through quite a large bridge. So that's at my nose height. So that's quite a large, it will be quite a large ravine when I've built it. And then, so this is all, then that's what I call the ravine track. As you sort of look down, you can sort of see it transversing up about a 3% grade. Then it comes back, goes in under the Nancy station. So this bit becomes all hidden, pops out the other side, up on the upper level, heads that way. There's a climb sort of there, more 3%. This sort of flattens out because it's like a little local passenger station. And then I've got a helix that's not a great representation of it. It is about a 1 3/4 turns or 1.5 turns up to this bridge here. So I will try to find a photo of what that looks like. If I can, so talk amongst yourselves. If there's any questions, please ask. I'll try to find a photo of what that particular area looks like, because it's yet to be scenic, but it gives you a reasonable representation of what it looks like.
Darren, this is Greg. I have a question. You say that the system throws all your turnouts for you. Does it have any way that it can deal with, if you have a hand-thrown turnout, it can at least, if it's wired, it can tell which way it's thrown and maybe stop the train or anything like that?
Yes, it can. So if there's two things that the system looks for. So it's got feedback. So if I'll blow this one up again. So you can sort of see this turnout here, 107. All right. So if I was to throw that with a hand controller, because that's an address of 105. All right. So don't ask me why it's not 107. It's just the way it's worked out. But anyway, so if I was to throw that, Greg, with my hand controller to come into this BY1 track, so
yeah,
the system will allow me to do that. So if that's pretty well what it does. So it's now going into that track. So if there was a schedule that was coming through that wanted to use this track, it'll just automatically flick it over because it knows that it's on the diverging, or the diverging route, I should say. So it does know if you were to use the system, it does know that it has flicked across. And so an example would be if I was out live, I could actually be clicking the system with within the hand controller. It would be flicking backwards and forwards, and it would show you schematically here. So the only time it won't allow you to do it is if probably not a great example here because it's not many trackage, but say if you're sort of say this part of the layout where you want a train that's coming out of this top track and wants to come out here, but you want to use out of this track here and go out, but you want to connect, say, do that point. If this schedule here is already active, it locks all the points, all the turnouts out. So you physically it won't let you select it. So basically what the reason that happens is so you can't turn a turnout underneath a train effectively. So.
Okay, well, what I'm thinking of, a friend of mine with a large layout, he has a bunch of hand-thrown turnouts in his yard. That they have detection wiring, but they can't be thrown but in any way other than by hand.
Oh, I see. Okay, so physically by hand. I have never done that. However, it does have a position control facility. And so it is offering feedback. So I'm assuming exactly how you would do that, I don't know. I know there is people out there that do use this. As you can see, but it's all grayed out, so I've never used it. So enable position. So I'm assuming within that facility, that's where you would do that. And you would somehow set an address up exactly how you would do it. I wouldn't know.
Okay, yeah, I could see it wouldn't be able to control it, but it might,
No,
if it sees it thrown against either
Correct.
the routing or against it,
Yeah.
where it might cause an accident, it might stop it or something.
That's right.
like that.
So all it's going to do is it'd still feed back to the system. So physically, using the 050, sorry, I missed what you meant by hand thrown. That, yeah, it would pick up if the correct position enableization, I suppose, one of a better phrase, is being active, I suppose.
All right, thank you.
I would assume that you would have to have the ground throw have a physical switch on the turnout, so
Yeah,
you know where stuff is.
Yeah, well,
probably.
two
Yeah.
chance throws do have wiring for detection. I mean, not all of them do, but you can get those, and that's what he has in his yard, so he can have detection. But instead of having 30 switches that might all be at one panel instead of right where the turnouts are, he has all the turnouts thrown by hand.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. You would need some sort of feedback at the turnout end, but hey, I'm sure that there's a lot of clever individuals out there that would work out how to be able to do that, I'm assuming. So it's not something obviously I do. Mine are all automatic with either hand controller or obviously off the PC screen. So that's probably interesting you bring that up. I can then, so I have, all right, so Train Controller runs also a system called Smart Hand. So what this screen here actually is it's all web server based. So what I can actually do is, and it's not actually live on the layout, so I can actually show you what it looks like, unfortunately. But so it can take 31 inputs effectively. So what an input is either a computer, a mobile phone, a tablet. So what you do, you run off this server address here. You put it into your web browser, and it brings up a version of the. Just let me see if I can do it quickly. If I can do it, I'll show you what the screen looks like. So I'm just bringing up a web browser on the other monitor I've got here. It'll let me do it. No, don't want to play the game. There you go. All right, so it does. It's going to let me do it. So this screen here is what the web browser looks like. So let me get it out of edit mode. So you can imagine this being on your mobile phone. So this is one way of controlling the trains. You've got all your functions down the bottom, which are set up in the engine section. I can then also go to the individual panels as well. So that's the panels. Obviously, they look a little bit different, just purely the colorings. But so there's limited things you can do. You can't obviously edit anything off these screens. You can switch points. You can push some of these buttons. You can operate the turntable, and a whole lot of other stuff here as well. So that's how I run what I call my local panels. So all my local panels, so I don't have to wire a switchboard, so to speak, or a control panel at each location. So I've got a computer that sits in this location for Blair Yard. I've got one that sits in here. and I've got one that will sit in, how about I bring the other photo up? Might be easy. How about I just go off that? So computers are one for Blair Yard, one for the harbour area, one for Barham station here, and one for the Alpine or Nancy station. So that's how many computers that I run. So then I've got the main dispatch one that sort of sits in an area just here. So that's the one that runs train controller properly, like this. So you need one primary computer that's running the software, if that makes sense, and all the other computers are slaves, and they get run through this area here. And I can then tell I've got one computer that's sitting on Victor Harbour Yard. So Jim, this is where I was talking before, how I would run virtual operations. That's how I'll look at doing it. So you would come through and you would bring that up and go from there. So so that's quite a neat little feature. So that's all run wirelessly off my network within my train shed. So the Roku Z21 runs a wireless, it's a Wi-Fi system set up, not radio like some, and it runs a router, a Wi-Fi router that all this connects to. The main train control program is Ethernet cable to the system for obvious reasons, but all these other computers are all wireless at this point, and they seem to work quite well.
So Darren, what you have to operate this is obviously a computer for the program.
Correct.
But then do you have to have DCC?
Yes, you do, yeah.
So you have to have some kind of a DCC operation in addition to this software.
That is correct, yeah. Well, sorry, what do you mean, like DC's command station? Is that what you mean? So basically, to run this as it is now, you need a supported DCC command station. So as I said, I use Roku. There's NCU that's supported. Most of the big ones are Digitrax.
So you have to have a DCC operation.
Correct.
Then you have to get this software and install it on a computer.
Correct. Yep.
And you have to get the detectors for each block and for each switch.
Correct. Yes.
And for each signal.
Yeah. Obviously, the signals are something that can be added on later. I've only got a few physical signals on my layout. So because I'm a European modeler, I run old-fashioned semaphores. So I don't know if you can see ones down here, what they look like. I don't know if you can see that, but so that's like a 3-axis. It's got 2 control arms on it, but so you control them separately. So you can then what I'm trying to say is with the signals, they are something that can be added later on.
Okay.
They're not mandatory for this system to run, because what train controller does, it runs its own internal signal. It's how it runs its collision avoidance system.
But to start with, you have to have the DCC, you have to have the computer, and you have to have blocks and the switches.
That is correct, yeah.
That said, just listening to what you've been going over, I when I first heard about this from Jim, I'm like, oh my God, this has to be really complicated. Aside from having to do the legwork, actually setting this up looks really simple.
Yeah, it is. To get it set up in its basic form, to get trains running, is quite simple. Where it gets quite complicated, and this is well beyond my expertise, I sort of understand. I'm the sort of person with this program that I can replicate something, but I can't put it from the design phase. So what I mean by that is, you write a lot of code if you want it to run it the way that I'm running it right now. So to give you an example is the gentleman that's helped me, we've gone one step further with what we call locking our turnouts. So because you're still requiring on, okay, so the way that the turnout locks work. So if you want to go from this point BY9 to this track here, all right, with a freight train, there's a point where, excuse the pun, but there's a period of time, because I've only got detection on the front end of my train, that this one here, so this detector that's running BY9 will turn off and show unoccupied, which means the route between BY9 and BY out, it'll cancel itself out and it'll open itself back up. So that means possibly train coming up here, but you might have a train that's still halfway through here. So what this gentleman has done, he set these, and this is just, this man's mind is mind-blowing in regards to computers, but if I can find one, where are we? What's that? So he's set up these locks. So we now know that we can't, if I can scale that out. So this represents this group of turnouts here. So he set up a whole lot of computer code here, or not computer code, but code within the program. So we know 100% that this turnout here, 138 and 144, can't get thrown until something occurs on BY out effectively. So what that actually means is, so BY out, you can see down the bottom of the code here, is it requires this detector to go on and all these other conditions met or not met for these points to be able to be used effectively. So what that means is, in simplest form, so that's where the code gets a little bit confusing, and as I said, it's well beyond me. So what that actually means is, so a train coming from BY9 to BY out has to physically get to its stopping point, because this is quite a long block. So this block actually goes all the way to here. All right, so it needs to get to its stopping point and fire off the stop marker within the system before it will allow these points to be released. So we now then know, it doesn't matter the length of train, because this is quite a lengthy piece of track in the real world, that the train is physically down here and well beyond all this point work before it's going to open up those turnouts up. So that's just a little bit of code where, or not a little bit, a lot of code that he has written, this gentleman, that assists with that. But in its basic form, you're right, Dylan, it is reasonably simple to get it up and running.
I'm a little late to the parade here, but so I missed like the first half hour.
Sure.
But how big is your layout, and is there a range limitation for the Wi-Fi?
All right, so my layout currently sits in a facility, or an outdoor sort of barn, shed, what we call them over here in Australia, about 30 feet by 30 feet. So if you've only just come, did you, so who we got? We got William. You did see that area there, didn't you? That picture? So that's that's my layout, give or take. So the Wi-Fi,
I missed the first half hour.
Yeah. So the Wi-Fi sits on an area,
Okay.
sort of, it sits on a raised platform, sort of in this area here. So then I've never had the Wi-Fi drop out, put it that way, not the area, because it's not, I'm not asking it. It's obviously there are issues with Wi-Fi because a shed area, it's all corrugated iron, which what we call in Australia. So I'm not asking it to go through corrugated iron walls or anything like that, because it won't do that. There would be limitations for that type of thing. But I suppose where you're going with that is if you wanted to have a dispatcher or something
Right.
in another room to run that system, there probably would be issues with Wi-Fi, but you'd probably be able to use Wi-Fi extenders or something similar to be able to get it from room to room. So, or you could go more sophisticated. So where my layout sits, I live on a rural property in southern Australia. So my train facility is the best part of 100 feet away from my main house. So I then run what they call a wireless mesh system between my internet connection that runs to the house to my barn effectively. And I run that across, they call a wireless mesh, and that works beautifully. So you'd be able to do something similar to that to have your dispatcher elsewhere. But that's only accessing the Wi-Fi within it. Of trying to work out a way, and my testing as to do virtual operations where you could be the dispatcher anywhere in the world effectively. You could literally log on if I opened up the server to do that. So the way I'm looking at doing that is I do have a website that I will run it off if it'll let me show. So this is my website. So I'll set up if it'll let me do it.
So you're saying that I could run it I could play dispatcher from my house in North Carolina and be dispatcher on your layout that far away?
Correct. Yep. So what I've set up, see, it's not, I haven't opened, I've closed all the ports up in the router out there, but effectively what I can do is I can send people to this web address, all right, and they click on here and you'll get buzzed into the system, so to speak, and then you would access a panel off this smart hand that would look like, if I can find it, it'll let me do it again. My Bluetooth's not working all that well. So you would access a panel. I don't know whether you saw this. That would look like that, effectively. If it'll let me do it.
Yeah.
So that's basically the virtual interface and what it looks like. Yep.
Yeah. That's the port area.
That's the portal area, yeah.
That's your port area, right?
Correct. Yep. So that'll be part of the virtual operations part of it. I've yet to run it in I've run it off the cellular network here in Australia, so I'm not using my Wi-Fi here. I've gone outside and then run it off what we got 4G network, and it works. I can get into it, no worries, and I can control points and all sorts with it. So that's the next thing I'll probably be looking at doing, I think. So.
Question.
Sure.
Well, two. I looked at the website and it doesn't show anything for Mac, so I'm kind of.
No, you're right there. That is an interesting point. My understanding, it is not Mac based. Yes.
No, it's strictly a Windows thing.
Correct.
But my question was, it mentioned a lesser level. So would someone with a really small layout, like say a bedroom, be better off with a lesser level of software? Or is it just
so
finances?
Well, it comes down what you really want to do. I'm not au fait with. Okay, so there's you're right. There's 3 levels of the software. There's the gold, which is the one I've got, silver and bronze. I'm not au fait with the inherent differences of what they all are. They are all on the website. If people want to have a bit more of a look, I'll quickly bring the website up.
The other question was, what's the metric on your shed?
Okay, so it's the actual shed with my workshop is about 60 feet by 30 feet.
Yeah, what's the
But
metric on it? Because I got the little conversion thing here.
But the actual train portion of it is pretty well 30 by 30 feet, or 10 by 10.
So it's about 10 meters by 10 meters.
So that's, but mind you, so if you're looking up my picture that I've got here, that would be sort of the inside dimensions, if that makes sense. So
yeah, just curious.
So this is the website of the program. So this is where the download section. So I suppose if you're at a point where you've got all your detection, you've got all your DCC system, you've got a computer, you can actually download the program and try in its entirety. And you can run the live layout for 15 minutes at a time, then it shuts down. Then you open it back up and you can toggle through it like that. And I did that for quite a number of months to work out whether it's something I really wanted to do. Because it is a fair whack of cash, this program. So
yeah,
to give you some, it is quite a large financial outlay. I've tried JMRI. That required a lot more computer knowledge from my point of view, which I sort of didn't have. It's the sort of, maybe I could learn the code, but this is straight out of the box.
Yeah, I've never used the layout control on it.
Yeah.
I'm in a wheelchair, so it's like a lot of this stuff is the DCC output to have all this stuff done is not cheap, and I got a really small layout.
Right.
And so I'm more thinking manual operation and stuff. But
yeah,
the one guy was asking about doing it on a really small layout, and I was wondering if there was that much difference in the manual, the dollar outlay.
Well, to buy the software, you know, whether you've got
software
one piece
part,
of track,
not all the switches and stuff.
yeah, the software it's no different. So if you've got a little Ingle Nook, like I think one gentleman was talking about, and you bought Train Controller Gold, would be no different from me with this operation. And I know there's another gentleman in America called Fred. He's got a larger layout again, and we're all using the same piece of software. It's just a matter of the information that's physically put into the software and what you want to do with it. So
right. Okay.
But obviously where you save on money is obviously the amount of blocks. To give you some sort of idea, I'm just trying to think how many blocks I've got on this. I've lost count over the years with what I'm doing.
You wind up saving money probably on not spending hardware.
That's right. That's pure and simple where you'll save the money. You don't have as many blocks, you don't have as many controls, you don't have the signals, if that's where you want to go with it. But you can run this thing virtually until your heart's content as well. I don't know if you were TC, you saw before, there is a simulator portion of it, which runs with this little locomotive thing here. You sort of run it. I don't know if you can see it puffing along there that's on. I can actually send off trains to make it how it would look within the computer system to replicate from the trains moving around the layout.
Yeah, yeah.
And also the beauty of this program is, say if TCU, you said, oh yeah, I want to go down this line and I need some help with it. What you can actually do is you can zip the file that it creates, which is no different from just a normal looking file, like a proprietary file for train controller. You could zip it, email it to me. I can work on the file and have a look at it and run the simulator on my computer and go, okay, we're going to have this, and this problem, or this is really good, or we can change that. I can zip it back up and send it back to you. So this is how I've worked with this gentleman in Germany for the past 5 years to get to this point with this piece of software. So you can, it's got a nice little sort of community bit to it as well. You can sort of help each other like that because you've got this simulator that, you know, replicates how the system on the computer is going to look and how it's going to run.
So what is
The
your
only thing
initial outlay? I'm sorry.
That's a really good question because it's been a system that has been built over 12 years. So it's just, you know, the actual software is, well, let me have a look. Hang on. I'll probably tell you. No, don't want to download it. I was trying to think. The actual software, I'd have to look at the website, but depending on how fun.
I think it's about $800 for the gold.
For the gold, yeah. But then obviously you've got all the hardware that goes along with it. But you know, it's the sort of system that I've built in sections. Computer control's not for everyone. It's something that it interests me, that I love the portion of it because I've got a large layout. Not many people live close by to be able to run it with me. So it gives me that flexibility. So yeah, so the software, but then I think I did a breakdown, I think, Jim, of all how much cost per block. But you know, that's inherent. That's just the hardware that I bought as well. So there's a myriad of hardwares you can buy out there. It supports just about all the mainstream sort of hardware options out there. So to put $1 value, I can put $1 value on the software, but you know, how much is an NCE controller, then whatever else with, you know, then which way do you go? Do you go LocoNet or do you go this S88 way that I've gone, protocol? So.
You said you had tortoises, but what is your DCC system you're running?
It's called Roco Z21, which is,
oh, okay.
Yeah. There is a little bit of it in America, is my understanding, but it's definitely not like it's in Europe, that's for sure.
Yeah, Roco is one of the small guys over here. Not to say they don't make bad stuff. Not to say they don't make good stuff. They do. I've had their locomotives, and they're fantastic.
Yeah.
But it's,
I suppose, yeah.
And I think part
depending
of
what you want, Roco is, yeah. Obviously, I'm European, so I sort of kept with that, and I've always had sort of the Roco. I've got a lot of Roco locomotives as well. It was just something I went for, but it's the actual control of the program. It doesn't really matter what DCC you've got, long as it's supported, obviously. Right. It's the way you set up. These are, you know, the way you set up your blocks and all that are no different. The addressing might be a little bit different from between LocoNet and, say, the what I've got, but it's no different from all the guys and girls out there that might be running LocoNet with this. It's set up the same way. So, because all the heavy lifting is really done with the software, not so much in conjunction with the your DCC command system as well. So,
yeah, this is like a drawing program. You can have your various AutoCADs or whatever, and you know, right. do you have to code it, Or can you just drag, click on and drag a line and it's doing the same thing underneath? It's just a
Correct.
matter of,
That's right.
how hard is it for you to do? So, yeah.
That's right. So this is particularly the collision avoidance that, as I said, I don't really know much about JMRI, but I know it's very similar that you draw you draw your track plan and you have your blocks, so to speak, your detection blocks. You justify the or your switches or your turnouts or the addresses, but then this is where this goes a little bit further, because the computer within Train Controller does all the heavy lifting regarding, say, a train that's going from this location here to BY out. So it sets all the points and all that, which I'm assuming you could probably set up in JMRI with like a macro, but it calculates the route. So it also then tells the system that nothing else can go up there and you can't have collisions with your trains effectively. So,
Right. What sort of background do you have career-wise or anything that would give you an in for this, or did you major in English literature and here you are?
No, definitely didn't have a major in English literature. I went to high school here in Australia. I'm currently a police officer in South Australia.
Wow. Well, that's why the traffic control is so important. Now I got it.
Yeah. Computers are sort of an interest to me, I suppose. This, as I said, this is not for everyone, but it's just a little niche within the hobby that I love, I suppose. I like tinkering around with the computer, getting it running that way. Some people like more hands-on, but I can have the beauty of everything with this. I can have full automation or fully manual trains with a click of a button effectively. So, and it's all set up for me. So, but it's at a point where it's running quite nicely.
So how many hours do you have in this? Or is it how many years?
I have years in this. Yeah. Well, just the layout or just the software?
Computer part, the software.
Oh, I don't want to count. To be quite honest with you, I really don't want to count. As I said, the whole layout is I'm 12 years into the layout, but I've only had the computer program 4 years, I think. 4 years, maybe 5.
And you've done all this with it. That's a lot of hours.
Yeah. Well, not just me. As I said, I've been working with this gentleman in Germany I've drawn most of the track plan and put all the addresses in, because obviously he doesn't know what they are because you can't see those, if that makes sense. So, so he can do everything within the program, but it requires me to go through and, define all the addresses for everything that needs defining.
So if you were drawing earlier just a simple program, and it was putting in like names, block number 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
I presume there's a simple way to go in and rename that when you get through drawing.
Yeah, definitely. So I'll show you. You can.
And like your switch addresses and everything, you can redesignate those to whatever you want.
Can do. Yeah, you can do what you like. So within the blocks, I keep picking on this BY9. That's a big one. So you just basically name it there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So then you can go one step further with it. All right. So this is where the program can get quite confusing. So
the options.
Yeah. So that's schedules. So you imagine setting up a layout of this size. Where are we? Blocks. All right. So this is where it's very important to keep to some sort of naming convention. So these are all the blocks currently on my layout, if you can see them scrolling.
Your layout's bigger than mine.
So, but mind you, some of these blocks have more than one detection unit in them as well. So to give you some sort of idea, So I'll keep on BY9 because it's an easy one. So this has only got one detection unit, which is this section here. Don't disregard all these other things because they're other fancy stuff this other gentleman's put in that sometimes I don't even understand. So you imagine then each one of those has, I'm just trying to find them. Where are they? Yeah, so each one of them has an indicator on them. So what you need to then do is you got to make sure that your naming convention for your indicator represents what the block is as well. So the block number. So there's an easy way of doing that. It's just like a little, you sort of do it like that. So I don't know if you can see that naming convention there. So this is for one of the contact indicators. So contact indicator is what you program with the DCC address for the block occupancy. So if you put a little a percentage sign and then a capital B and then the name of it, when you go and have a look at it properly, it'll have, for that indicator there, it'll be BY9 break stop indicator. So you're not having to go through and put the BY into every bit. So you can actually go through with a naming convention like that and it populates out all the names for you. So if that makes some sort of sense.
Does Roco make all of the components as far as detection and all of that, or did you have to third party, or how does that go?
No, Roco do. Roco is my third DCC system for this, and will be my last because I don't want to rewire this thing again. I started out with a system called Zemo, which was an Austrian company, but it was ridiculously expensive. Like it got to the point where I was starting to have a few issues with it. To give you some sort of idea, I use my detect. So I don't use, besides my DCC, I don't use any other Roco product besides the controller, hand controller, and the locomotives and some rolling stock. So I don't use any of their DCC componentry because it is still reasonably expensive. And this program sort of highlights that you don't need all the bells and whistles regarding, say, like a LocoNet system. If you've got a LocoNet, that there's no issue with it. It'll still run it, but you don't need your transponding and all that because the program's doing it for you. It's tracking everything around, so you don't really need that sophisticated detection units. So I went for a much cheaper option, which is have you gentlemen heard of a layout in Germany called the Miniature Wonderland?
Right.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Which
So
is a lie. It is not miniature by any means.
No. Just on that, I'm going to push my own little barrow here. I interviewed one of the technicians there the other week, and it was fascinating. Just, this guy's mind. Anyway, we digress. I use the same detection units they've got, which is a company called Lefinski. So it's just a German brand, using an older protocol, which is S88N, which is, so you got LocoNet and S88N. So there's two different protocols. So, so those, to give you some sort of idea, might be, so for 16 blocks or 16 individual addresses for your detection would be $50 American, I suppose. Whereas the first system I had, it got to the point, it was that the prices were getting that ridiculous. It was probably $500 American.
Ooh.
So it was very price prohibitive. So, so I've went away from that because obviously this program does everything that those things did. So,
Well, with Digitrax, they have the DS64, which can run 4 turnouts. You don't have any of that kind of stuff underneath this thing. Do you
Not
just have
Digitrax, no.
wires? Well, I mean,
No.
the equivalent.
Yeah, I have the equivalent of, yeah.
Okay.
So that company's equivalent, yeah. So Lefinski's equivalent. I know use another
Oh,
company
okay.
called Digitrax, which is, Digitech.
Right.
DigiKeys,
Yes.
which is a Dutch brand. So they're just a different, same but different. So just different brand. So.
Well, not pushing Digitrax, but they do claim that it runs with other systems, but yeah, right. So and NCE to me actually does a better job with more turnouts anyway per investment.
Sure.
So, and supposedly it will run with Digitrax as well, but who knows what you want to do, but you're saying that you've got no issues with compatibility with what I call third-party suppliers of the various things, and you get full functionality and everything.
Yeah. So there's some guys out there that will run a DCC system just for their trains. So I do my Roco runs my trains and my turnouts on separate buses, obviously. And then I've got another system, the S88 interface, which is a one in itself that runs all my block occupancy. There's some people out there that will then divide their layout up into more, then they'll have another command station just running signals. And I think you can go out to about 7 different digital command controls. So.
What about the NMRA's new layout command control? Does it support that?
I would probably think not at this point. No, if it's new, no.
It's similar to
depending on what it runs on, I suppose. Depending on what protocol it runs.
It runs on a CAN bus. It doesn't control trains. It just controls the layout.
Right. It may well, depending on, it might be something one of the other manufacturers has run something different. I know the Zemo runs its own CAN bus. Roco has its own CAN bus. So whether you can use one of those and trick the system into using it, I don't know. You'd have to email the owner to find out whether that protocol was supported. So
yeah, it's may not with it new enough. I don't know.
No.
And I'm not familiar with the European systems like Roco and DigiKeys and all that mess.
Yeah, they're all pretty well the same.
Oh, I'm going to get my phone and my wallet.
So, all right, gentlemen. Is Jim seems to, we've seemed to have lost Jim.
No, I'm here.
No, you're here? Oh, there you are.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Is there any other pressing questions? Because I'll probably need to get going very shortly because we've got Father's Day festivities I need to organise. So.
Yeah, I was just about to say we had when we had a gentleman from Hong Kong on here. Everyone else is falling asleep, and he's getting more and more enthusiastic and all that. It's like, hey, wait a minute, he's on the opposite end of the world. He's we're
I hope I haven't put people to sleep yet. I hope I haven't put people to sleep yet.
Probably started kicking in.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Darren, I think it's time we stop this, Darren. It's been a little over 2 hours now. And
we have. It's been lovely.
I know
maybe we need to we'll do a part 2 at some stage. So
there you go. But listen, I can't thank you enough. I really do appreciate you taking the time, and you got a beautiful layout. And thanks so very much for sharing your knowledge with us tonight.
My pleasure. It's been good. I'll have to get onto some more, and we'll definitely do another one. We'll maybe do a part 2, which is when I get this virtual portal running up a little bit better, and we'll have a bit of a play with that maybe. So
fantastic. Love to do it.
That'd be great. All right, gentlemen. Lovely to meet you all.
Well, thank you. Well,
my pleasure. Okay. No worries. Bye-bye.
So, gentlemen, next time be Wednesday, this coming Wednesday, September the 9th at 7 o'clock. Bill Davis is going to be our featured modeler. I think most of you may know Bill. I originally profiled Bill back in 2018. So he was one of the first people that I really profiled in one of my articles. And it's I really do appreciate him taking the time to be our featured modeler this coming Wednesday. And I think you'll enjoy hearing from him and seeing his modeling and finding a little bit about what he does in the hobby. So I appreciate him being able to do that for us. And with that said, gentlemen,